Hello and welcome to Monday Night Travel with Rick Steves Europe. Tonight we will be exploring Sweden's glorious capital, Stockholm. My name is Ben Green and I'll be your host this evening. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce tonight's special guests. Please welcome Gabriella Ylvasdotter and Ylva Gunillasdotter, both natives of Stockholm, and a mother-daughter guiding duo. Good evening, or should I say good morning, Ylva and Gabriella.
Good morning, I suppose.
Good morning would be correct. It's 4 a.m. in the morning here.
A bit early or a bit late, depending on your perspective, I suppose. And where are you?
We're in Stockholm, in Gamlastan, the Old Town.
Perfect. Very appropriate for tonight. I must ask, you both look fabulous. But is it true or false? Did Swedish Vikings actually wear helmets with horns?
No, there were no horny Vikings, no.
I suppose not.
Yeah. I bought this today in a souvenir shop in the Old Town.
Yeah.
Perfect. And you are both Best of Scandinavia guides, correct?
That's correct. We both do the Scandinavia tour.
And how was your season? I presume it's over now that it's October.
It is. It's a short season. We start in mid-May and in mid-September it's over. Short, but nice.
Yeah, 4 months. So we are done for the year. But it has been an amazing season.
I'm so glad. And what will you do now in the off season?
Yeah, we'll go to Bali. I will be taught how to surf.
Yeah.
Gabby will teach me and her partner.
Yes. So we are bringing my whole family, my partner, my kids, and my mother to spend the winter in Bali.
Incredible. Well, you both are far braver than me. I couldn't imagine trying to surf, but that is fantastic. I wish you both luck. I do have one more burning question for you. So your last names seem to reflect the names of your mother. Could you tell us a bit more about how last names are formed in Sweden?
Well, let's start with my mother, Gunilla. It's an old Viking name. Gunilla means shield maiden, which is actually a reason why I bought these fake Viking helmets to honor her. Gunilla means shield maiden, and I have a photo here of one quite well-known shield maiden.
And bring it up like that. You see Lagertha from the TV show Vikings.
Yeah,
Yes.
The TV show that is so well done. It's so accurate, and you don't see any horse on the Viking helmet. So let's take them off. Yeah. So Gunilla is my mother. Daughter, dotter means daughter, of course. Ylva means she-wolf. So my name is, I think, pretty cool. She-wolf, daughter of shield maiden. And my daughter, Ylva's daughter.
So I'm Gabriella, the daughter of Ylva. I have a daughter, her name is Tyra, Gabriella's daughter. My son is Ivar, Gabriella's son. So this tradition, this way of naming children after the parent and then adding daughter or son depending on the gender, it is an old Nordic tradition, one that is still kept alive, very much so in Iceland. So you still use this way of naming newborn. But the traditional way was to take the father's name and adding son or daughter. That's why we see so many Johnsons and Swensons and Andersons. So in our family, we have done it differently. We have taken the mother's names and then added son or daughter. So a matrinomicum, we call it. So a feminist statement.
I love it. Fantastic. And it explains a lot, because we do have a lot of Johnsons, across the US and beyond. And it makes me wonder, and I think maybe everyone joining us tonight can ponder what their last name might be if they were Swedish or perhaps Nordic. I think mine would be Skansen, right?
Yeah,
Ben
exactly.
Skansen.
Ben Skansen, very good. You can move over here already.
I just might. Be careful what you wish for. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. We're so glad to have you here and explore your home city. And I think now we can proceed with learning a little bit more about Stockholm.
Hi, I'm Rick Steves, back with more of the best of Europe. This time, we're in the birthplace of Social Security and dynamite. It's Sweden's capital city, Stockholm. Thanks for joining us. Here in the north of Europe, of the Scandinavian countries, Sweden is the biggest and most populous, and Stockholm is by far Sweden's dominant city. Locals here are considered particularly confident and self-assured. In exploring the city, the character of its people unfolds through its many attractions. We'll explore the Old Town, be dazzled in its city hall, enjoy a slice of reindeer in style, cruise to the palace, chill out in a convivial ice bar, imagine Sweden's once upon a time mighty navy, marvel at the work of a local sculptor, tap our toes to a Swedish beat, and sail the archipelago for the ultimate in Scandinavian summer beauty.
Ylva, Stockholm is farther north than Juneau, Alaska, but it has a relatively mild climate. How is that possible?
It's totally thanks to the Gulf Stream, a warm water current coming from the equator, continuing up along the Norwegian west coast. So thanks to that warm water, we have really nice climate the whole year round.
Yes, above the Arctic Circle, it's amazing. Above the Arctic Circle, along the Norwegian coast, we have berries, apples, cherries, flowers. It's green and lush, even so far up north, and that is all because of the Gulf Stream.
That is amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Is it true that most people, though, live in and around Stockholm or in southern Sweden?
Yes, it is. We have less than 11 million inhabitants in Sweden, and
less than 2 million, I would say, live up north. Most people live in the southern parts of the country. So up north is mainly just big forests. A lot of Sweden is covered by forest, long distances between neighbors. So few people, a lot of trees.
A lot of personal space, I suppose, as well.
Yeah.
Gabby, is summer the best time to visit, or could you also come in winter too?
I would say that summer is absolutely the best time to visit. It depends a little bit on how long you're staying. During the summer, you could easily spend a week or two here and really enjoy the outdoors part and not only the cultural and historic part. If you come during winter, you can enjoy some beautiful city and Christmas lightings and decorations. It's a really beautiful city during Christmas time. Then I would probably say it's a bit shorter though, so maybe 2-3 days in the city. If you do want to stay a bit longer, then I would venture up north and go skiing, maybe catch a glimpse of the Nordic lights and do that part of Sweden also. And then, if you stay for longer during winter.
I would love to see the Northern Lights. That's a great idea. And as far as public transportation goes, Ylva, Stockholm is fairly manageable. Is that true?
Absolutely. We have an excellent public transport system with trams, metro, local buses, ferries in between the different islands, commuter trains in suburbs. It's easy to understand. And since everyone speaks English, you can always ask for help with finding the right connection. It's inexpensive. Yeah, it's nice.
Very effective.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. I can certainly attest to Stockholm's manageable system for visitors as well. And, being a Nordic Scandinavian country, I think Sweden has a reputation of being relatively cashless. Is that true in the case of Stockholm? Do visitors even need to go to an ATM to get cash?
No, on the contrary. If you have cash, you will have difficulties to get rid of it. So
Yeah, more and more places are completely cashless, so card only. Restaurants, hotels, shops, they only take card. Card is king 100%.
I love it. That makes it very easy. And central Stockholm is surrounded by water. In what areas, Gabby, do you think visitors should consider spending their time?
Of course, it depends a little bit on your interest, but what I would do what the locals do, especially if you're here in summer. We want to be outdoors. Since we have so long winter months when it's cold and dark, when it isn't cold and dark, we almost feel ashamed if we're indoors. We have to be outdoors. So I would pack a picnic basket, I would rent a bike, I would go to the Royal Hunting Grounds, which is the island. So if you look to the right of your map there, on the Baltic Sea, you see a green island where it says the Vasa Museum and Skansen. I would bike around that island. They have beautiful forests there. They have beaches. They have wooden jetties out in the water where you can take a dip, bike some more, grab something to eat, bike some more, explore. So that is what I would do. What about you, Ylva?
I would visit the Old Town with all the history, the medieval part of the city, but then also Stockholm is a city with a lot of museums. I read somewhere that there are more museums per capita in Stockholm than in any other city in the world.
Excellent. Two different suggestions. I would try to do both, and I think most visitors probably can, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's dive in to the best of Stockholm.
Today, with nearly 2 million people in Stockholm's greater metropolitan area, 1 in 5 Swedes calls this city home. Once a respected military power, now famously neutral, this stately capital respects its rich heritage while embracing modern innovation. Stockholm is defined as much by water as it is by land. Part of an archipelago, it's surrounded by both the sea and a large lake. The city is nearly as full of parks and trees as it is with buildings, and it's traversed by numerous bridges. Wander through the city, and you're struck by its elegant architecture, proud monuments, and inviting promenades. Stockholm's appealing waterfront is both a working harbor and a welcoming people zone. Overlooking it all in the heart of the old town is the Royal Palace. In summer, with great fanfare, military bands herald the changing of the guard. The ceremony in the courtyard of the palace recalls the days when Sweden was a militaristic power, a kingdom to be reckoned with. While this spectacle does look formidable, it's more a celebration of Swedish heritage in a country that today is famously pacifist.
Sweden used to have a larger presence in Northern Europe, including in Finland. Ylva, what is the relationship between Sweden and Finland like today, and what was it like in the past when it was one country?
I would say it's good. If you ask a Finn, you might get another answer, unfortunately, I think, as a Swede. Finland was a part of Sweden for 700 years. We don't really know about the ancient history, but until 1809, Finland was the eastern Sweden. We lost Finland to the Russians, and then Finland became a Russian province, which some Finns today say improved the situation for the Finns. But today I would say we are, I hope, good neighbors. When Finland applied for a NATO membership, Sweden did so too. And the only reason why Sweden did was because Finland applied for membership, because otherwise it wouldn't really make sense. So I would say it's a good.
I would also say we have a good relationship, but of course it's not a completely uncomplicated one. For instance, I know that some Finns really don't like the fact that it's still mandatory to study Swedish in Finnish schools. And some of them think that maybe it shouldn't be, since they are a separate country now. For a longer time they weren't. For a longer time they were part of Sweden. So within the Swedish border, you spoke Finnish, you spoke Swedish, German, Sami, it was all Sweden, even though you spoke different languages. But now it isn't. Now it's two different nations, but still Swedish is a compulsory subject in Finnish schools. And that is not, how do you say, seen as something positive by everyone. So it's not completely uncomplicated, but I would say generally it's a good,
We are good neighbors.
we're good neighbors.
Well, I know that a lot of Finns and Swedes, I suppose, in the opposite direction, love to take the overnight ferry between Helsinki and Stockholm. So I think that is a good experience and probably helps in the relationship between the two countries today.
Absolutely. We did that a lot when I was growing up. Very often we took the overnight ferry over to Helsinki and visited their lovely capital.
And for travelers too, I think it's a fun experience to consider also the overnight between Helsinki and Stockholm.
Absolutely.
All right, up next, more Swedish history.
Strong and expansionist kings like Gustavus Adolphus, who ruled in the early 1600s and was a brilliant general, made Stockholm this country's permanent capital and established the Swedish Empire. Gustavus Adolphus was nicknamed the Lion of the North. He made Sweden one of Europe's top powers and was instrumental in helping the Protestants turn the tide against the Catholics in the 30 Years' War. Because of his innovative tactics in the battlefield, he's considered by many to be the father of modern warfare. For a glimpse at the splendor of Sweden's former power, step into the Royal Armory. While fearsome on the battlefield, armor had a ceremonial value as well. These pieces must have dazzled viewers back in the 1600s. That was the point. The fine workmanship elevates tools of war to an art form. The same lavish attention to both protection and style was also given to horses. The Swedish royal family kept up with their counterparts elsewhere in Europe. 4 centuries of coronation and royal wedding wear take you from the time of Gustavus Adolphus, this is his fine suit, through the ages. This 1766 wedding dress of Queen Sophia was designed to cleverly show off her fabulous wealth. And the dress, with its extravagant material, seems even wider when compared to her 20-inch corseted waist. The Royal Palace, which contains this museum and several others, is one of Europe's biggest. While it's technically the royal family's official residence, they actually live outside of town at Drottningholm Palace. The most scenic way to get there is the way the royals once did, by boat. We're cruising up Lake Mälaren. This relaxing voyage is a delight, revealing more dimensions of this city of lakes, parks, and islands. Drottningholm Palace has been called Sweden's Versailles. The public is welcome to enjoy the garden and tour the palace. The grand entry leads into a world where 18th century style prevails. Back then, Europe's monarchs, who were considered divinely ordained to rule, were tightly networked by marriage. In fact, the Swedish royal family had blue-blooded cousins ranging from Catherine the Great in Russia to Louis XVI in France. The decor pushed the notion of a divine monarch, but the king was long challenged by a strong parliament, and today, Sweden's royalty is a modern constitutional monarchy.
The status of a country's royal family seems to vary from place to place. Ylva, what functions does the Swedish royal family play today, and how does it coexist within Sweden's parliamentary democracy?
Well, we have a king right now, and the king is the head of the state, so he's the person number 1 in Sweden, but with no political function, none whatsoever, which makes the person number 2 so much more important, and that is the Speaker of the Parliament. And in my opinion, it's stupid to have a head of the state that inherited that position. But as long as the majority of the Swedish people is in favor of the monarchy, Sweden will continue being a monarchy, since Sweden is a democracy. But Gabby Googled how big percentage of the Swedish population that is in favor of the monarchy.
It was 65%, but these are figures. The last time they did a measurement or they polled this was in 2016. So it might be even less. It is declining. So I don't know how it looks like now is that we won't be a monarchy forever. When that pans over to less than 50%, there will probably be a change, which people feel differently about. As you heard, Ylva is a Republican, which in Sweden means something else. It means that you're for a republic and against a monarchy. I would say that I'm a monarchist.
Ooh,
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Well, now you know. I think
I'm shocked.
it's fun to have a monarchy. It's an important part of our history, our identity. I might not always be in favor of the monarch himself and some things he says, but monarchs comes and goes. Monarchy, well, tradition. It's nice.
Yeah, very true. That's quite a secret you revealed, Gabby.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I disappoint you?
Yes, you did.
Oh.
I changed my will.
We will see what the future holds. But for now, we'll return to lavish surroundings.
The ballroom hosted formal occasions. The bedroom was a kind of theater where the monarch would be ceremonially dressed as nobles would help him slip into his leotards. The lavish library illustrated the royal commitment to education in the 18th century. The palace's Baroque theater takes you back 200 years. And as in palaces throughout Europe, Roman busts implied at least symbolic connections with the Roman Empire in order to substantiate and legitimize royal power. Originally, the entire city was contained on this island. Today, Stockholm's Old Town, or Gamlastan, is popular with locals and visitors alike. The town square, called Stortorget, was once an important commercial center. Now it's simply a favored place to relax and enjoy the Swedish good life.
Gabby, as a Stockholm resident, how do you feel the city has changed over the years? And has tourism changed places like Gamlastan?
Oh, I think that question is better for you, Ylva, who's been around Stockholm longer than I have.
It has changed, but to the better, I would say. The old town used to be a slum, and now it's just beautiful and charming.
But of course, the city is always changing. It changes, well, not only with tourism, but the city is growing. Stockholm has grown explosively the last couple of decades. If you count the suburbs, which are the parts that are growing, we're over 2 million people in Stockholm. But then we see other kinds of changes also. We have seen the last couple of decades slow gentrification of the city center, since most rental apartments are being turned into condominiums. People who can afford to buy an apartment, people who can't afford to buy an apartment are moving out to the suburbs, which means that the people that live in the city center are basically pretty much alike economy-wise. So if you want to see a bigger variety of cultures and ethnicities and languages, you have a better shot of doing that visiting the suburbs, which I would actually, if you have a longer stay in Stockholm, I would add to the itinerary. We have some beautiful suburbs, which are really interesting and easily accessible by the metro and commuter train system.
That's a great tip. Stockholm through the back door via these suburbs. I like it. All right, let's learn a bit more about Gamlastan.
Gamlastan's main drag is a hit with shoppers and crowded with tourists. But venturing just a block or two from the commotion, the atmosphere changes. Tranquil lanes feel much as they did back in the 17th century. Medieval Stockholm was a trading center, busy with merchants from foreign lands. The German church, rocketing heavenward, reminded all of the power of Germans in this part of Europe. With the Reformation in 1527, the king made Sweden a Protestant state. Suddenly, church services could be held in the people's language rather than Latin, and that meant every nationality needed its own church. The Germans worshipped over there, the Finns had their church, and the Swedes got the cathedral.
The cathedral, while grand, is wedged into the tight quarters of Gamlastan. The interior is cobbled with centuries-old tombstones. When royal families worshipped here, they sat in their own private pews. These date from about 1700. While originally Catholic, this church has been Lutheran for 5 centuries. With the Reformation's passion for sermons and Bible readings, the pulpit was a focal point. You can feel the feistiness of the Swedish Lutherans in this 500-year-old statue of St. George and the Dragon. It's carved of oak and elkhorn. To some, this symbolizes the Swedes overcoming their arch-enemies, the Danes. In a broader sense, it's an inspiration to take up the struggle against even non-Danish evil.
Ylva, has rivalry with the Danes been relegated to the dustbins of history? It seems like Sweden gets along fairly well with its Nordic and Scandinavian neighbors, of course, but is there still a rivalry today?
I would like to say no, because we are, as mentioned before, good neighbors, and I love Denmark. I love Danes. I love everything Danish. But we have been in war quite some times. I have heard a number for
36.
36 wars. Yeah,
Yes.
sounds about it. So, of course, historically, there has been a lot of rivalry, but I would say today, no. If there's a football game when Sweden is not participating, I would root for the Danes.
Yes. But again, just like with the question about Finland, it is a complex issue. And I would say it's easier for us Swedes to like our neighbors. We really like the Norwegians, the Danes, the Finns. And I think they might not all feel the same towards us at sometimes. And we have a little bit of a big little brother syndrome going on, since we have been, we still are the biggest country by far among us, our neighbors. Historically, we have had both Norway was part of Sweden for a time, Finland was part of Sweden. We had this history with Denmark warring back and forth. So it is a complex issue, but generally today, if you would ask a person, we would absolutely say good things about each other. But we do have a complex history background between us.
Yeah, so it seems. I'm glad that it's a time of mainly good relations.
Yeah.
And now we will turn to the subject of Swedish cuisine.
When choosing a place for dinner, I try to leave the high-rent spots to the tourists and find small restaurants with low rent catering to a loyal hometown clientele. And of course, locals know the best places. My friend Hakan and his wife Ylva are taking me to one of their favorites for a lesson in good eating Swedish style. And that's changed a lot since Hakan and Ylva were children, including New World wines and lots of spices brought by recent immigrants to enliven the traditional meat, fish, and potato staples.
And what is this, Sami?
This is the reindeer roast beef.
Reindeer roast beef, you say? Okay. So, Hakan, the potato really just has roots in your history and your culture.
Extremely much so. Sweden's population started to grow in the 1800s, and there was someone who said the reason was peace, vaccination, and potatoes.
This reindeer is really tasty.
Oh yes, reindeer, I would say, is the beef of the north. That's the beef of the Laplanders, and it's spread all over Sweden.
Local food with local knowledge. It's always a winning combination.
I think I see someone familiar in this frame. Ylva, is that you?
Yes, a long time ago when my hair had this color.
Oh, you haven't aged a day. I sincerely mean that. I really do. Well, I think that this is a good moment for you to share what you are sipping on this evening.
Oh, yes.
Yes, okay, of course. So here we have, let me see if there I can get a good look at it. Brännvin. Ylva, I think you can tell them what this is.
Bränn means burning, Vin means wine, so burning wine. It's not wine, it's made from potatoes, so it's a vodka. Water of life, aquavit.
High alcoholic content.
30%.
Yeah.
Yes. But there is a cute story about an Italian painter who was invited to paint the ceilings in the Royal Palace here in Stockholm. And he didn't speak much Swedish, I suppose, but he was offered this, and he understood vin, wine, vino in Italian. And after a while, he wrote a letter home to his mother in Italian, where he wrote, translated to English, something like this. Dear mother, I will never go back to Italy. I will never leave this country where women are so beautiful and the white wine so strong. Which we are grateful for, because he founded the Swedish Art Academy. Taraval was his name. So, skål to Taraval.
Skål to Taraval.
Mm. Skål.
Skål.
Ooh.
Yeah. When I have a little drink tonight as well, some Finnish salmiakki licorice vodka, the closest thing I had to something from Sweden. It's a bit different, I suspect, than what you have, but I propose a toast to Stockholm.
Oh, skål. Skål.
Skål.
Skål.
I think mine is close to 30% as well, probably. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we can carry on. But first, actually, I should make one important point. For those of you playing Rick Steves Bingo, the mysterious and silent bearded man here, our producer, Simon, he's only in the scene for about 3 seconds. He is one of the bingo points, in case you needed another reason to have another sip.
Stockholm's Nobel Prize Museum tells the story of the world's most prestigious award. Stockholm-born Alfred Nobel was a prolific inventor with over 300 patents. His most famous invention? Dynamite.
Living in the late 1800s, Nobel was a man of his age. It was a time of great optimism, wild ideas, and grand projects. His dynamite enabled entire nations to blast their way into the modern age with canals, railroads, and tunnels. It made warfare much more destructive, and it also made Alfred Nobel a very wealthy man.
Wanting to leave a legacy that celebrated and supported people with great ideas, he left his fortune to fund the Nobel Prize. Each year, laureates are honored in the fields of physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, and perhaps most famously, in peacemaking. Portraits of all the prize winners since the first annual ceremony was held in 1901 hang from the ceiling, shuffling around the room like shirts at the dry cleaners. And video clips let you ponder the contributions of so many great minds. The annual Nobel Prize banquet is held just a short walk away in Stockholm City Hall. It's a stately mix of 8 million red bricks and lots of Stockholm pride. While churches dominate cities in Southern Europe, up here in the Scandinavian capitals, city halls seem to be the most impressive buildings. They celebrate humanism, people working together for the good of their community.
I've always been struck by the supported openness of Stockholm City Hall. Ylva, is City Hall a place residents visit as well?
Yes, absolutely, but not as tourists. We use our City Hall as it was meant to be used. It's a place for political decisions. So what you see there is the main session room of the City Council, where we have 101 members, which is really quite a lot for a city with 1 million inhabitants. We Stockholmers, we use our City Hall for events, parties, concerts, Christmas
Fashion shows.
Christmas parties for children. It's a palace-like building. And I suppose everyone traveling has seen a lot of palaces built for kings, for emperors, for bishops. But in Stockholm, we have a palace built for the people, and we do use it.
That is amazing. I think of the little city hall I have in my town, and I don't think I've ever stepped foot in it, and I've lived here all my life. So I think it's probably a bit different. It is a beautiful building.
It is.
Built in 1923, Stockholm City Hall is particularly enjoyable and well worth its entertaining hour-long tour.
So this here where we are standing is the Blue Hall. It's the biggest reception hall of the City Hall, and this is where the Nobel banquet takes place the 10th of December every year, hosting 1,300 guests. This here is the council's chamber, since the City Hall really is a functioning City Hall. In here, the Municipal Council of Stockholm hold their meetings. Now, what I would like to show you in here is our magnificent ceiling. It's done to look like an old Viking house. The construction of the old Viking houses were long and narrow, exactly like the ceiling right here. This here is the Golden Hall, artwork finished in 1922. We have about 19 million pieces of mosaic in here, and it is real gold in each and every one of them. The centerpiece of this room, you can see behind me here, this is the Queen of the Lake, a symbol of Stockholm. The Queen of the Lake here, she is situated in the center of the world. On the left side there's the Western world, the Eiffel Tower, the Statue of Liberty. On her right side, the Orient, an Indian elephant, a Turkish flag. And not only the world, because around her sides there are also the different zodiac signs symbolizing the universe. She's the Queen of the Lake, Stockholm, center of the world, center of the universe.
My understanding is that a nickname for Stockholm used to be Queen of Lake Malaren. Gabby, is that an old name and symbol for the city, or does it still resonate with residents like you?
I would say you're correct. I would say that my generation, we wouldn't call Stockholm this. I would say that many from my generation wouldn't even know that Stockholm was called this. Probably different for you, though.
Oh yes, we absolutely refer to Stockholm as the Queen of the Lake.
Yeah, the Stockholm was rebranded like 10 years ago to be called the capital of Scandinavia, which I think more of my peers would recognize.
And something that probably irritated our neighbors, because Copenhagen, Oslo, Helsinki are beautiful cities, and then suddenly Sweden called their capital Stockholm the capital of Scandinavia.
Yeah, it's pretty cocky.
Yeah.
I can see that. It is interesting, though, to see how Stockholm wants to brand itself.
Yeah.
Okay, and now we'll hear a bit about my favorite part of the City Hall.
The City Hall comes with a bold tower. It offers a commanding view of Stockholm's 14 islands, which are woven together by about 50 bridges. Sweden's stunning capital is green, clean, and people-friendly.
This is really a stunning view, and I think it's reason enough to visit the City Hall. Ylva, what are your favorite Stockholm viewpoints or beautiful scenes? I presume this is probably one of them.
No, my favorite viewpoint is from the Parliament, from the gallery or the public gallery in the Parliament. It's 7 stories high up, so the view is really good. The Parliament building is located right in the heart of the city. And there are guided tours of the Parliament the whole year round. Weekends, this time of the year when the parliamentary session is going on, but then during the summer recess, Monday to Friday. And it's free. There aren't many things you can do for free in Stockholm, but the guided tours of the Parliament are excellent, free, and comes with a stunning view. Yes.
But there are a lot of viewpoints. I really like the Parliament also, but we do have on the southern island, Södermalm, there are different viewpoints up on the mountains. We can have a lovely view of the city. Or if you are an adventurous kind, you can go to the fun fair, Gröna Lund, and then you can do these rides where they shoot you up 100 meters, like 300 feet up in the sky, and drop you back down again, of course. But you do get a free fall, but you do get a lovely view of the city.
If you dare to watch.
Yes.
I imagine you're doing that frequently.
Never, ever.
I do.
I'm used to using stairs to get to a nice viewpoint, but that would be an alternative method. I'm taking notes though. These are good tips for next time. I do love a good view, and I think we have a few more beautiful scenes ahead of us here too.
Strolling the shoreline promenades, you join the parade of locals. Well-worn old working ships seem content, retired in the shadow of elegant facades. Rather than cars and buses, it's the domain of joggers, baby strollers, and visitors marveling at the joys of this city on the Baltic. Stockholm exists because of its location, where Lake Mälaren meets the Baltic Sea. Traders would paddle their goods from far inland to this point, from where seagoing merchants would ship it south to Europe.
In the 13th century, the new Kingdom of Sweden needed revenue. So they established customs laws and levied duties on all the copper, iron, and furs that passed through here. Today, the lake, which is about 2 feet above sea level, is connected to the Baltic Sea by locks.
For the thoughtful observer, history is everywhere. For example, centuries ago, this Kungsgarden, or King's Garden Square, was the private garden of the king. Today, this is clearly the people's domain. It's considered Stockholm's living room. Swedes are leaders among Europeans with their social legislation. They pay high taxes and have high expectations. Swedes enjoy a minimum of 5 weeks paid vacation from the day they're hired. In the interest of family values, new moms and dads split 16 months of paid paternal leave any way they like. And Swedes believe that every citizen, regardless of their family's economic status, gets quality health care and education. Alcohol is highly taxed, and tourists contribute to Sweden's costly entitlements every time they buy a drink.
This social system is probably one of the most well-known aspects of Sweden. Gabby, how do you feel about your country's welfare arrangement?
Oh, I feel very proud about it. I really do. It's an amazing country to live in because this welfare state, and welfare means something different here, so that it's everyone fare well. It makes sure that people doesn't fall out, or at least try to make sure that very few people fall outside of the safety net. People are taken care of, paying high taxes, but just as Rick said, have high expectations, and we do get a really good education system, free all the way through, even university, healthcare. It's a wonderful country to have children in, since you have everything for free, dentist, childcare, all the different kinds of it. So it's something, of course, I'm very proud and feel very blessed to be part of. Absolutely.
One of the founding fathers of the Danish constitution said that we want to create a society where few has too much and even fewer has too little. And that is what I would say all the Scandinavian countries' constitutions are based upon.
It sums it up very well. Yeah.
Very powerful phrase indeed. And here we have a little teaser of what comes next. I think we're going to cool off in an ice bar.
A fun, if touristy, way to do that is to put on a heavy coat and enjoy a fancy vodka on ice. Literally. The Absolute Ice Bar is actually made out of ice. For your cover charge, you'll get 45 chilly minutes to sip your choice of vodka drinks in an ice glass, at an ice bar, or lounging on a nice ice sofa. In a scene like this, there's no shortage of conversation. Sergelstorg was built in the 1960s to balance the political and royal city with a bustling commercial district. This modern center of Stockholm is dedicated to shopping. Festooned with sales banners blowing in the Nordic wind, thriving pedestrian boulevards are lined with temptations on sale. Hotorget, literally Haymarket, now feeds people rather than horses. This vibrant outdoor produce market changes colors with the seasons. Today in August, it's berries of the forest and golden chanterelles.
Oh, ho, ho, look at those. Ah, my mouth is watering just seeing the image. You know, I've spent a decent amount of time in Finland the last few years, and there it's extremely common for people to go out and pick berries in the forest, even in their own backyard or beyond, and to know what mushrooms are edible and okay to pick. Is this common in Sweden as well, would you say?
Absolutely. Some mushrooms are poisonous though, so you need to know which mushroom to pick. And my generation, we would pick everything, take the basket to the Museum of Nature History, something. It's a museum where experts, mushroom experts, would scrutinize them and tell you which to eat and which not to.
Well, my generation, we have an app for that. So people do pick a lot of mushrooms here. It's a really popular pastime. So this time of year, this is what I see a lot in my social media feeds nowadays. But it's really nifty. We have an app where you can just scan the mushroom, and it will tell you if it is a poisonous one or if it's an edible one. And it's amazing. This time of year is actually, well, from around August to September and beginning of October, sort of my favorite times because of this. You can go out and pick. I pick a lot of apples and pears and plums, and I make jams and purees. So on my way to work, I bicycle, and I have my kids in a stroller tied to my bicycle, and I fill it up with apples, which I pass on common areas, and you can just pick. We have the right to roam, or the Act of Common
Access.
Act of Common Access, maybe it's the name, which is an amazing rule, amazing law that makes sure that nature is for everyone. So even though most of the land in Sweden, like around 80%, is owned privately, everyone is entitled to use nature. So you can go camping, hiking, berry picking, mushroom picking, even though it's privately owned. And this is something that we do use a lot here in Sweden. We Swedes, we are a nature-loving people, and we spend a lot of time outdoors. And this is one of our favorite pastimes. Foraging, picking, and then best part, eating.
I can relate to that. And I was actually going to ask you about the every person's right, so to speak. So it's fabulous that you have that. I'm jealous. And certainly that openness to nature is a beautiful thing.
It is amazing. And it's not only for Swedes. So everyone who comes and visit, and not only Sweden, we have this in all of the Nordic countries. You can go camping. Everyone can just pack a bag, go find a spot close to a lake and go camping anywhere you want. It's amazing, and it's for everyone, and it's for free.
In Finland, the same, of course, and I picked a lot of berries this year, so I can appreciate this very much. Yeah, absolutely.
Overlooking the market is a striking statue by Carl Milles. For more of his work, you'll find a veritable forest of statues by Sweden's greatest sculptor on a bluff at the edge of town. Carl Milles spent much of his career here at his villa, where he lived and worked for 20 years. He lovingly designed this delightful sculpture garden. Milles wanted his art displayed on pedestals, to be seen as if silhouettes against the sky. His subjects, often Greek myths, such as Pegasus or Poseidon, stand out as if using the sky as a blank paper. Yet, unlike silhouettes, images in the sky can be enjoyed from many angles. Milles injected life into his work with water, splashing playfully. Perhaps his most famous work, Hand of God, gives an insight into Milles's belief that when the artist created, he was, in a way, divinely inspired. The city's harbor is busy with ferries, and many take people into its vast archipelago. an amazing playground of literally thousands of islands stretching 80 miles from the city. There are plenty of ways to see the archipelago. Those taking the huge cruise ships that ferry travelers to Helsinki enjoy 3 hours of island scenery before they finally reach the open Baltic Sea. You can take a quick boat tour, or, what we're doing, catch a ferry with the locals.
Stockholm is so fortunate to have this natural beauty right at its doorstep. Ylva, is this ferry trip to the archipelago something to only do in summer? Could you do it in the other seasons as well?
You can absolutely do it the whole year round. A lot of people lives out in the archipelago. One of my best friends, or actually my best friend, next to Gabriella, of course, lives on an island. And when I visit her, I take the ferry. Only way to get there, actually. There are no bridges to in there.
And do you need to buy a ticket in advance, or can you just buy a ticket right there?
You can buy a ticket right there with a card. I don't think they
charge. No
cash. But you can also use your transportation card, the local bus card.
Or the same ticket as you would ride that you use for the metro and the tram and the buses.
Very easy, very easy. I visited Stockholm twice, but haven't yet been to the archipelago, so next time.
One of the joys of an archipelago trip is to grab a perch on the breezy sun deck with the Swedes as they enjoy their island wonderland. Ferries serve over 100 islands. They stop at others on request or to plop down the day's mail. Every cabin seems to have a couple of lounge chairs strategically placed to soak up the relaxing view. Your archipelago options are endless, and you don't need to own a cabin to enjoy this idyllic island escape. Our first stop is the popular destination of Vaxholm. About an hour from downtown, it has a well-preserved fortress just off its busy harbor front, as well as a quiet and charming old town mixing shops and restaurants. Today, it's hard to imagine that back when Sweden was a military power, this fort was built to secure the city from attack by sea. The ramparts remain, but they're manned not by soldiers, but by sun worshippers, enjoying Sweden's long summer days. My favorite lookout post? Annette's Homestead Cafe. For Swedes, their coffee and pastry break is a ritual, embraced with all the vigor of a constitutional right. And here, savoring life to its fullest just seems to come naturally.
It feels like we are beginning to describe Fika. Gabby, could you share with us a little more about this famous Swedish state of mind known as Fika?
Oh, it is a state of mind. It really is. It's such an important part of our culture. You see here now, coffee. So Fika is coffee, usually, could be tea also, and then normally something to nibble on, usually something sweet. Like here, for instance, we have the classic one, the bulle, the cinnamon roll, a homemade one, and then we eat this while we drink our coffee. But it's so important here. So we have fikas all through the day. We have the mid-morning fika, we have the afternoon fika, we have the evening fika. And not only are fikas very important in our private life, but also in our professional life, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every workplace, industries, offices have a fika room, where we meet with colleagues, we discuss anything but work. So we talk about politics, religion, families, weather.
Yes.
No, not weather. No, it's boring. But it's a way to sort of disconnect with work for a little while, have the very important coffee.
But then we also have important fika meetings. So in a company, you wouldn't call to a meeting without offering fika. That would not happen. So in the boardrooms, you always have pastries and coffee served because that's an important part. Right now, for instance, we're in the process of building our new government. So we had an election in Sweden just a month ago, and the prime minister is tomorrow presenting his new government. And while the speaker has been in talks with the different party leaders in the parliament, he has, of course, offered Fika, and that would be unheard of if he didn't. It's so important. So when the party leaders leave the boardrooms or the meeting rooms where they have met with the speaker,
the first question a journalist would ask is, so what kind of Fika did he offer?
That's how important it is.
I love it. Maybe I can take up this Fika here as well. What do you think if I give it a try and see if it will catch on?
Absolutely. Fika is life.
Yes, and it makes the meeting easier. You speak actually better over a cup of coffee than a glass of
If you say so, Ylva. I love it. Bring on the coffee and pastry.
For an even more peaceful and remote destination, ride a couple hours past Vaxholm and hop off in Svartsö. The little grocery provides this island community with whatever it needs. Residents stock their cabins using the island's answer to a moving van. And visitors can hop a rental bike. In moments, you're out in the countryside, immersed in pastoral farmland and pristine nature. Your bike ride is memorably capped with a stop at the Island Eatery. We requested the house specialty and were overwhelmed with the bounty of the Baltic. Even if you don't leave Stockholm, you'll still likely be on the water. Scenic harbor tours are popular, and shuttle boats zip between the many islands. From downtown, it's just a quick hop to Djurgården, the garden island. 400 years ago, Djurgården was the king's hunting ground. Now this entire lush island is Stockholm's fun center, protected as a national park. You can rent a canoe, enjoy a bike ride, munch a picnic, or just take in the harbor scene along with a good cold beer. And this island has several of the city's top museums. The Vasa Museum is my favorite maritime museum anywhere. It took several centuries, but Stockholm turned a titanic flop into one of Europe's great sightseeing attractions. The Vasa, while heralded as the ultimate warship of her day, sank just minutes into her maiden voyage. It was 1628. The king, eager to expand the reach of his domain, launched his formidable new warship. Laden with an extra row of cannon, she was top-heavy. A couple hundred yards from the dock, a breeze caught the sails and blew it over. The Vasa sank to the bottom of Stockholm's harbor, where it sat for over 300 years. In 1961, with the help of steel cables and huge inflatable pontoons, the Vasa rose again from the deep. Today, the Vasa, the best preserved ship of its kind, is chemically petrified and housed in a state-of-the-art museum.
Stockholm has many great museums, of course, the Vasa Museum being just one of them. Ylva and Gabriella, what are your favorite museums in Stockholm?
You want to start?
Okay, I start with my favorite, the National Gallery, with an exquisite art collection with pieces of art from the Middle Ages and up till the 20th century. And not only art, it's design, so furniture, clothes. It's really a nice, not too big National Galleries. It's nothing like the Louvre or Prado in Madrid. It's doable. 3 stories, perfect art museum, in my opinion.
Oh, but there are so many. There's so many fun, quirky museums. But the Vasa is absolutely one of my favorite ones. Also, it is amazing when you, even now after I've been several times a year, when you open up those 3 sets of doors, I'm still today struck of how gigantic and fantastic it is. But there are a lot of fun museums. We have like the police museum or the railroad museum, which are really fun, interactive museum to bring children. That's actually, I would say, one of the most common weekend activities for families in Stockholm is to bring the children to these museums where they get to jump into an old tram from the 1950s and pretend to steer it, or in the police museum you can ride a police motorcycle, and a lot of fun, quirky museums. But also traditional ones like the Royal Armory, which is also a fantastic museum where you can see the blood-stained outfit from one of our kings that was shot at a masked ball in 1792, and that outfit he was wearing with the blood stains is there on display. It's amazing. So we have an abundance of fantastic museums. If you like Astrid Lindgren and Pippi Longstocking, we have a museum dedicated to her.
We have a Jewish museum. We have a museum for
photography, which is really good. Lots of museums. So for every different kinds of interest or hobbies or fancies, there is a museum here in Stockholm.
A lot of great options. I've just been to a few, but Vasa certainly stands out for me.
The Vasa is decorated with hundreds of statues, all designed to show the power of the king known as the Lion of the North, Gustavus Adolphus. Detailed models like these show life on board and evoke the instant when the hopes and aspirations of this mighty ship and her crew were dashed. Artifacts on display humanize naval life in the 17th century. This awe-inspiring ship is a time capsule from an era when Sweden was a European power and was gearing up to expand its empire. Another great site here on the Garden Island is the Skansen Open-Air Folk Museum. This was the first in what became a Europe-wide movement to preserve traditional architecture. Founded in 1891, Skansen is a sprawling collection of 150 historic buildings that take you back in time. These homes, churches, schoolhouses, and so on were transplanted from all corners of Sweden. Today, tourists take a virtual trip all over the country without leaving the capital, seeing wonderfully furnished old interiors and folk crafts in action.
To me, this is a significant Swedish contribution. It's remarkable to realize that this is the first open-air museum because Skansen are popular and often some of the top sites in a variety of European destinations, including Helsinki. Ylva, Sweden in many ways feels like a modern and progressive country, but in what ways do you think Swedes are preserving their cultural heritage?
Through education. So a visit at the Skansen Open Air Museum is definitely part of the school system. All ages have field trips to the Skansen Open Air Museum. So how many times have you been there, Gabby?
I can't even count, but lots of them. It is really fun, all-day excursions that schools do.
Yes, and you learn a lot.
Oh yes, you learn a lot about life in Sweden before the Industrial Revolution.
And it's hands-on.
Yeah.
As you can see in this movie, people are dressed in the old traditional costumes, working with the same tools as they did before the Industrial Revolution. No, it's amazing. It's so alive.
Yeah, wonderful. Very important to preserve this history.
Artisans demonstrate their crafts. The potter works his magic, enthralling visitors old and young. And glass, traditionally a big industry here in Sweden, is blown. Observing peasants fiddling out on the porch takes you back to a time when people provided their own entertainment. And in a park dedicated to keeping folk traditions alive, a day at Skansen is memorably capped at a bandstand with some Swedish folk dancing.
I hope you've enjoyed our visit to this quiet, content, and often overlooked corner of Europe. Traveling here, you meet a people who've struck that elusive balance between the productive life and the good life. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rick Steves. Until next time, keep on traveling.
All right. Thank you so much, Gabriella and Ylva, for guiding us through some of the best of your home city. It was a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Oh yes, it was our pleasure. It was a lot of fun to be able to talk about Stockholm with you.
We do have some great viewer questions, and we are going to get to those. But first, I would like to share the word from our sponsor for the evening, and it is our Explore Europe page on our website. And I'm actually going to take us to our homepage and share where that lives. It's a great resource. This is ricksteves.com. Here on the left, we have Explore Europe. And here you can find so many great pieces of information. You first search by country. So let's go with Sweden. And it's like a home page of a lot of our material. So we have some of our favorite places in Sweden. We have an at-a-glance look at the different towns and cities. We have itinerary recommendations and lists of festivals and other information, some nice photos. There's our, of course, Stockholm episode, and we have a travel talk on Scandinavia, viewable online. We have written articles, and we have clips from our radio show. So it's really a destination-specific one-stop shop of excellent information about travel in Europe. Great for whether you're planning a trip or you just want to learn more. So I highly recommend our Explore Europe webpage. All right, let's get to some excellent questions now from Gabe. Zara is wondering, how is climate change affecting Sweden, would you say?
Wow, good question. Climate change is affecting Sweden a lot politically. I would say we might not have, we're very fortunate that we live in a part of the world where we don't have a lot of natural disasters. So we don't see these floods and droughts. We have had pretty dry summers, but they mostly affect our crops. So we don't really get this extreme water shortages and problems that we see in other places of the world, not yet at least. But they do affect us politically and economically. We have very high electricity prices right now because of political decisions. We are closing down nuclear power plants because of the fact that this is an environmental debate. Should we have nuclear power or not? Of course, the war in Ukraine also contributes to this electricity prices. But we are affected by it, but not as much as other countries in the world, since we are very fortunate, well, not to have a lot of natural disasters here. Do you have anything to add?
I would say that winters are milder now. I remember when I was a kid, we skied to school.
Yeah. I've never done that.
No.
Yeah. Snow.
That makes sense. Stephen is wondering how affordable Stockholm is compared to other places in Scandinavia, would you say?
Oh, in Scandinavia, I would say we are the most affordable. Yeah. So both Denmark and Norway is more expensive than Sweden. Absolutely. So it's the cheapest of the three. But in general, comparing to the rest of the world and the rest of Europe, it's one of the more expensive places. Absolutely. But comparing with our neighbors, Denmark and Norway, most affordable.
Yeah, I think I've heard that Norwegians might go to Sweden for a little shopping, and Swedes might go to Finland, and Finns go to Estonia, right? So
exactly, yeah, that's true.
Jeff is wondering what currency Sweden uses, and why don't you use the euro?
We call our coin krona, which means crown. And we had a referendum about joining the monetary union. Yeah. And then the majority of the Swedish people said no to the euro. And since Sweden is a democracy, we kept our krona, which is, if you ask me, stupid. But no one asks me.
No one asks you. Well, I don't agree with you. I think it's a good thing we have the crew now.
Okay.
More information coming out here tonight, only on Monday Night Travel. Debbie is wondering if Sweden has experienced much immigration, and you touched on this, I think, earlier. How would you say Sweden is handling its immigrants?
Oh, so we have a large immigration, I'd say population or immigrant population. About 20% of the people living in Sweden are born outside of Sweden. And of course, this depends on where you stand politically, what you think about this. I think this is a wonderful thing. If you talk history, we started this talk about Finland, and when Finland was part of Sweden, and when within the borders of Sweden you spoke German and Finnish and Sami and Swedish. Well, now you speak different, they speak Farsi and Arabic and different African languages, and you're still Swedish. It depends, of course, but we have been, since the Second World War, we have been a country where we take in a lot of people from countries that need help.
So refugees.
And you are quoting my father, it is the Christian thing to do. If someone knocks on your door asking for help, you open your door. What else can you do?
And we can afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah. Georgine commented that Sweden, at least from some perspectives, had a unique approach to the pandemic, especially early on, if I'm not mistaken. How do you think Sweden handled the pandemic, and what do you think public opinion is about it now?
I would say we are really happy about the decisions our authorities did, because we just followed what the authorities told us to do, and they told us not to use masks. So we didn't.
They told us to keep distance. Yeah. So I think what created a lot of buzz in media internationally was the fact that we didn't have a shutdown, we didn't lock down, we didn't have a lockdown, we didn't close schools, and this was a thing that, of course, was well thought out, because besides the part of the disease, the negative aspects of it, there are other aspects of how people would fare being locked in, the psychological aspects, but also the educational aspect, what that would do to a whole generation of kids that were locked and not being able to go to school. Schools were closed. And this was something that the government here worked, they saw this as the last resort. They didn't want to close the schools if it wasn't really, really needed. So we did a lot of other things to really try to avoid that. So we had to keep distance. All of the shops and museums and public spaces had requirements that if you had an establishment that were 1,000 square feet big, you could only have 100 people in there. So, let me see if the math. No, 10 people. I'm sorry. So 10 people per 1,000 square feet.
One person per square.
So
10 square meters.
Yeah, so one person per 10 square meter, one person per 100 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
So you could easily keep a lot of distance when you were in a shop or in a
gym. So all the gyms were open, which also contributed to the health of the people, I would say, because health care in Sweden is to go to gym. We call what you call health care, we call sick care.
So our hospitals, we call that sick care, and then for us, health care is something different.
Yeah.
So we try to keep everything open. We try to keep life as close to normal as possible, but of course, with rules, and especially about keeping distance. And number one, if you have had any symptoms, if you felt,
stay at home.
Even if you just felt strange, stay at home. So that was what we did, and now afterwards I think most of us
are really happy about it. And statistically now, when everything's sort of flattened out, our access mortality rate is not higher than the other.
Excess mortality rate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very interesting. Yeah, the approaches and the differences in approaches from country to country were quite stark. So it's fascinating to hear your perspectives on Finland's approach.
Yeah.
Barbara is wondering, what are your favorite festivals that occur in Stockholm?
Oh, well, my favorite one is, of course, the food festival. We have one every summer in the King's Garden that Rick showed on the clip here, which is amazing. So local restaurants, they put up food stalls in the entire park, and you get to buy like small sample plates for a very more affordable price than they usually are. And you can go buying several and trying different parts of their menus, go for a drink, go for another round, and just eat and drink and enjoy the good weather. It's an amazing festival.
I like the jazz festival. It's small. It's on a little tiny island close to the Old Town, Skeppsholmen, the ship island, but with international jazz musicians coming. I don't know now after the pandemic, though, if there has been a jazz festival this summer. I don't think so, but hopefully it will start again.
And another favorite of mine is the Culture Festival, which is also usually in the end of summer in August. So there was one this year, and it's amazing. And that's a festival that takes place in the entire city. So different venues, different squares and parks. And then they have, like, in front of the opera performances, dance performances, theater, art exhibitions. And it's a lot of fun. I remember going to one event a couple of years ago when they had put up these zip lines in above. It was a square close to the city, close to the Old Town where we are now, and they had these dancers flying around like angels, and they had these gigantic bags of feathers that they emptied out on top of us, and the wind took these feathers and blew them all around the city. I live south of Stockholm in a suburb, and biking home afterwards we found these feathers even that far away. It was amazing. So another fantastic festival is the Culture Festival. It's a lot of fun, a whole week.
Wow, those sound excellent. I think the first one you mentioned is one I want to go look up, though, and possibly attend. I'm with you on the food.
Just call me when you go. I'll join you.
Excellent. Consider it a plan.
Yes.
Okay, Ylva and Gabriella, we have time for just one more question. Comes from Kathy, and she would actually like to learn a few Swedish phrases, or perhaps a greeting or two. Are there a few greetings or phrases you might be willing to share with us?
Of course,
yes.
Of course.
Hey, which means hello.
Yeah.
Hey. It's a simple one.
We did say one earlier. We said skål, which is cheers. Skål.
Skål.
That's a good one. What more is good to know?
Lagom.
Lagom
is really important.
Lagom.
Lagom is quite unique in Sweden. It means not too much, not too little. It doesn't mean perfect, because you don't need to be perfect. You need to be lagom. And that is an old word since the Viking age, when you drank from skulls. That's the reason why you say skål. Skål. Yeah. And you drank from a skull, you took a sip, you gave the skull to the next person, took a sip, gave it to the other, and then that skull with mead or whatever had to make the whole team around. So lag means team, around, lagom, drink lagom. Not much, not little.
Just enough so that everyone gets a sip. And this is something that I think it's a word that is unique for the Swedish language. It means, so it's one word for not too much, not too little, but it really, well, it's a word we identify with. We are the country lagom. We're not too much, not too little, and we try to make sure that what we have is lagom. It's just enough so that everyone gets a piece.
It sounds perfect. Thank you so much for those phrases. And that was our final question for the evening. So Ylva and Gabriella, thank you so much for being with us for this wonderful exploration of your home city You've really shown us what a gem Stockholm is, and you've also shown us, by being here, that some pretty great people live there as well.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you again, and enjoy your off-season and surfing. That sounds excellent.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
And to all of our viewers program also, we are going to have Renaissance Art with Rick Steves and his friend and guidebook co-author Jean Openshaw. So stay tuned for that. This was our, believe it or not, 86th Monday Night Travel. We're so happy to have you all with us through these shows. It's been an absolute delight. So thank you so much, and see you all hopefully next week. Good night, Gabby. Good night, Ylva.
Good night, Ben.
Good night.